Okay, so that episode, the finale of The Mandalorian Season 2, just destroyed me at the end there. And wow, what a treat for Star Wars fans in general. I'm kind of speechless right now, and you all know why. So let's get into the final review for The Mandalorian Season 2. What is up, Star Wars fans? Welcome to my finale review for The Mandalorian Season 2. This is titled Chapter 16, The Rescue, and I really don't know where to start here. I've got enough notes for me to speak for like 35 minutes. I hope this video doesn't go on for that long. I'm going to try and get past a lot of these notes that I've taken to get to the more juicy stuff. But my reaction to this, it was a very, very thoroughly entertaining episode. It was a lot better than actually what I thought it would be. However, I do know there's quite some Star Wars fans out there who enjoy Star Wars, but there are some issues. And I don't want to rain on anyone's parade, but there are some. But I'll get into those as of when. One example is just like what was already established with the Darksaber in previous canon with Bo-Katan and Rebels. And now they've kind of added in something which completely is inconsistent with that. So it's just things like that. I'm very intrigued by it, and I'm really looking forward to what that story beat will provide in the future between Mando and Bo-Katan, for example. But there's just like little things like that. But wow, it reduced me to tears. Like, there's no shame in me admitting that. What this did for Star Wars fans who have such a sentimental connection and this absolute burning desire to see Luke in the way they did it, it was just wow. You know, fair enough if you're a sequel trilogy fan, but do you get a little taste now as to how that is the guy who saw a dream from his nephew? And just, you know how the story goes. I can't even. Thank you for portraying Luke in the way that he literally was and is and should have been. But okay, I'm probably triggered some subscribers who are diehard sequel fans. But anyway, this episode starts off with Slave One, everyone on board, pursuing Dr. Pershing's craft, and they got hit with an ion cannon to disable the ship. Now, one thing I really enjoyed about this is, I love how they're hiring these really on-point actors to get the Imperial. It's the proper, like, Imperial accent, like, for the Empire. You know, it's the very... Yeah, I really feel like they embody it very well, but I just appreciated the shade that was thrown at Cara about Alderaan. This person actually said he was there when Alderaan was destroyed in Episode 4. He also adds in as well the Imperial perspective, and this isn't actually just the Imperial perspective. It's also just facts. Like, he says, you know, do you know how many millions were killed on those bases as the galaxy cheered? Now, obviously, like, we all know why the Death Star and the Death Star 2 were destroyed, but there were millions of people on board, and they just died. But anyway, swiftly moving onwards, Slave One lands on the planet, and we get to see Bo-Katan. He says, I need your help. They took the child, and then it was revealed all about Moff Gideon, and she was like, you'll never find him. But then, like, as soon as she realized that they have the coordinates, she was right to attention, because we know she wants that Darksaber, and with the story that was set up in this episode moving forward, causing a bit of conflict and tension, is very, very interesting. But yet again, I really want to touch on how that completely contradicts canon, and I know some people don't mind stuff like that, but where do you cut, you know, when does it stop? You know, if you keep doing inconsistent things like that. But stay tuned. If you have no idea what I'm on about, I'll be very, very interested to hear your perspective on what has been laid out now going forth with the Darksaber. I loved how they just even entered that cantina, by the way. Very space western, like Mando and Boba just looking left to right with their freaking helmets. But either way, Sasha Banks, Koska Greaves, and Boba Fett get into it. You know, I didn't really mind that at first because I loved the kind of like taunting from Boba and how he was chuckling. I was just looking at Koska Greaves just like, yeah, do you really want to start this with him? They did try and put like like they're beating up each other just as much as the other person. That's up to your, I guess, fan perspective. Do you think Boba should have thrashed her? Or do you think Sasha's Koska Greaves character could just be really as randomly skilled as Boba Fett? Maybe. Why not, I guess? So yeah, the whole cantina scruffle, like Western bar tavern rumble, if you will, was entertaining. But this is where the episode really picked up into like the mission briefing stage. Also, whilst I mention it, the foreshadowing for the season 3 plot was more crystal clear than ever, because this is when Bo-Katan said, if you should manage to finish your quest, I would have you reconsider joining our efforts. Mandalorians have been in exile from our homeworld for far too long. We need to retake Mandalore. And especially with the way this episode ended, I can really only see one path in sight now. But the bigger question is, and this might have to be a whole separate video because this video would be too long otherwise, is will we see Baby Grogu again? What does this mean for the Mandalorian moving forward? Will it be this way? Will it be that? Like, it's very, very, very interesting. And actually, a lot of things that I didn't expect happened in this episode. Like, we thought Thrawn would be thrown in here maybe, but that really does seem to now just be completely separate for Ahsoka. But I do apologize, I digress. I keep getting off track here because my mind is exploding. We have early on in the episode Bo-Katan saying Moff Gideon is mine, like, get it kind of thing, and we all kind of know why now because of the whole, like, it's basically the whole Elder Wand situation. Think about it. This is Harry Potter rules. Disarm the person with the Elder Wand, you are the rightful owner, and there's literally no other way about it unless you disarm them, aka in this, beat them or defeat them in battle. But anyway, this is where we're swiftly moving on to infiltrating the light cruiser of Moff Gideon. And so they're requesting emergency docking as Boba is firing upon them to obviously fake the whole thing. But I really appreciated all the shots of when Moff Gideon launched the TIE fighters. Like, I felt like the action here was really entertaining. Like, all the different kind of angles they went with. It wasn't just a simple launch the TIE fighter and out you go. They were kind of clunking different parts together, and it just made it seem like a nice kind of fluid thing to be entertained by. Love the comment from Boba Fett, power up the shield, princess, I'll put on a good show. And I love Boba, but I am kind of disappointed isn't the right word. I just guess my expectations, you know, as they say, is the mother of all failures almost, like in my own projection here. I would have loved, and this is a unanimous thought, at least it feels like, from a lot of fans, is that we would have loved to have seen Boba, like, reign in there. I know he hyperspaced away, but he could have just come back in, I suppose, and, like, helped him. But also, whilst, not to put a downer on this or anything, but rest in peace, Jeremy Bulloch, because he passed away yesterday. If you didn't know, he is the original actor for Boba Fett in the original trilogy, and he passed away at 75 years old. But either way, rest in peace, and if anything, it's just nice to appreciate the kind of continued legacy we have of his character, especially in the post-credit scene that sets up a whole new chapter, really, for Boba Fett. By the way, the infiltrating party come out of that ship raining hellfire. This was awesome. I mean, who wouldn't be entertained by seeing Bo-Katan, all Mandalorians suited up? Gideon activates the Dark Troopers, and the montage and sound effects of them being activated, they want you to know this means business. And Mando this whole time is making his way to the brig, and that is when they start trying to get through the door. Mando tries to shut it, but one manages to get through, and holy crap, I was very entertained by this. You know, when the punching just happened to his head, and thank God he was wearing a Beskar armored freaking helmet? That was savage. Like, I use that word very sparingly, but it was a very impressive demonstration of how powerful these troopers are. Mando's blaster fire did absolutely nothing to their armor, and as I said, his face was just getting punched into the side of the corridor, literally making a dent within the corridor wall. This is what one trooper does to a man with literal plot armor. Like, imagine everyone else. But I have to admit, in that moment where he just, like, jettisoned them all out in space, I was thinking, okay, that was a bit lame, because I was like, okay, that's what one does, and then they all just get taken care of out in space. But thank goodness they came back later, and we finally reached the moment where Mando gets into the brig, and Moff Gideon is there standing over Baby Grogu with his Darksaber. It was kind of predictable with how this was going to go. It's very interesting as well, just some slight unexpected moments. For example, I didn't really think Moff Gideon would have already got what he wanted out of Baby Grogu, the blood. I guess this serves the larger overall plot with what they set up very subtly, foreshadowing the Palpatine or Snoke clones. This blood will serve as, like, something, I guess, to I carry on that story in a subtle way that won't ever really be revisited upon in a focused lens in the Mandalorian show. But you can imagine in your mind where that's going to go with achieving, I guess, the sequel trilogy in the long distant future. And of course, even though Gideon was just like, you know, you take the kid, then he tries to kill Mando. And I was just like, good luck, Moff Gideon. Like, I know you may be proficient to a degree, but do you really feel like you can take on, like, a Mandalorian, even though you have a Darksaber? Like, he's got a Beskar spear. You're kind of screwed, but if I was in his position, I suppose you're gonna try anything, right? Love the moment when he grapple hooks him and Moff Gideon just kind of shakes it off. But either way, Moff Gideon is disarmed, and as he said, like, yeah, this should be very interesting, and it most most certainly was for the repercussions of this moment. So let's get into this part. So they approach the bridge, Moff Gideon, we have freaking Mando with baby Grogu, and the Darksaber lit up like whatever fan or many fans wanted to see baby Grogu in arm and Darksaber ignited with Mando. You got it. But this is where all the dialogue started happening with Bo-Katan saying what happened. And this is where Moff Gideon said, that's not what she's talking about. Why don't you just kill him now and take it? Amanda's just like, just take it. I don't care. Like, I yield. Take it. And what follows is Moff Gideon's explanation. And I'll explain why this is problematic to a lot of Star Wars fans, including myself, despite the enjoyment I still get out of this. And like what they're setting up for the future. It's just, as I said, when does it end if you keep doing stuff like this? So he says she can't take it. It must be won in battle. In order for her to wield the Darksaber again, she would need to defeat you in combat. As I just went over, he tries to hand her the saber, and Moff Gideon says, it doesn't work that way. The Darksaber doesn't have power. The story does. Without that blade, she's a pretender to the throne. Basically, without defeating you, rightfully. It's Elder Wand rules. As I said, like Harry Potter, if you're familiar with that, you can't wield the Elder Wand kind of in a proper way unless you disarm the person properly in combat, and then it's rightfully yours. Problem with this, my fellow friends and Star Wars fans, despite how much I enjoy this, in Rebels, canon, Rebels, Sabine hands Bo-Katan the Darksaber, and she becomes the rightful leader of Mandalore. Do you see? I'm not trying to treat anyone stupid here, but do you see the issue with that? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So what I'm trying to say is they make a whole big kind of low-key retcon here. And is it even a retcon? I don't know, because you have to defeat Mando to get the saber. This is very clearly making Bo-Katan feel awkward in this moment, because she's like, well, you know, oh god, what am I going to do? I want to become the leader. Why in canon did Sabine just hand, like literally, she hands the Darksaber to Bo-Katan, and she's happy to just take it and become the leader, right up until the point of where Mandalore is sacked in the Purge, and she gets it taken from her, from Moff Gideon. So like that all canonically adds up in a timeline, but all of a sudden, at this point in the timeline, you can't just hand it to her in the exact same way that Sabine did. There was no difference to Mando trying to do what he did in that moment through handing it to her as what Sabine did in Rebels. That's what I think a lot of people have some issues with. I agree. I don't really know what much more else to say other than it doesn't make sense. It is a writing issue, and I don't think anyone is really wrong with taking issue with that. Grading things like this on entertainment for Star Wars fans, it was off the charts. But grading it critically when you do stuff like this, you can't help but acknowledge the flaws of the writing in the episode. So I would love to know what you think of this. Do you think, personally, that it is really silly if you canonically... It's not just a small thing either, don't forget, at the end of the day. It's not like some really trivial thing. This is a massive plot point in Star Wars Rebels where Bo-Katan gets handed the Darksaber and she becomes the rightful ruler of Mandalore. There was no defeat in battle. There was no Elder Wand logic where you become the rightful owner through defeat. She got handed it, and now all of a sudden in live action, which is a canon continuation of that story in Rebels, you can't just hand it. Yet, historically and canonically proven, she didn't mind that beforehand, being handed the lightsaber, the Darksaber. So you get the issues, but hey, I'm still excited to see where this goes. So does that bother you? I know some of you are going to say it doesn't whatsoever, but if things can just happen like this all the time in stories, books, episodes, movies, then can you really give it so much merit for its critical score? Either way though, we're about to be boarded, they say, and the Dark Troopers are back. The only slight issue I have with this, if, you know, I just want to address it because why not? We see them flying back into the cruiser, right? This should have happened like 10-15 minutes before when they got jettisoned, so you could just argue it's convenient that they're now only just coming back in, but overall that doesn't really bother me. Moff Gideon was taunting them about having enough trouble with one. I completely agree, because let's see how you do with a whole platoon. And this moment, guys, first impression, I thought, wait, is this just like New Republic somehow being informed? How does this work? Okay, then when I saw the person get out, I was like, is that Ahsoka? But then you saw one blade. Instantly, when you didn't see the green, I believe it was like white on that specific security camera screen. I was like, okay, so maybe Cal Kestis, because the predictions videos that I've done, it's just like I say and phrase it in such a way like, do I dare bring up Luke Skywalker? Because you will have some fans saying, and rightfully so, that's so stupid. They wouldn't do that because some fans would be so annoyed that it's a recast and it's not Mark Hamill, or if they tried to do Mark Hamill with CGI, it's like, is that reducing Luke Skywalker in general? So it's like a very touchy subject, but I mentioned it anyway. But I still thought the only way they'll do Luke, and I said this, is maybe through a Boba Fett Season 1 kind of way when he kneeled down to Fennec Shand, and that would continue on the baby Grogu storyline of where he reached out and he needed that response. I thought that storyline would go on for a lot longer, but no, it's all concluded and wrapped up in this episode, and we'll get to that in a minute. But no, it was Luke Skywalker. I lost my, my jaw was wide open because it almost doesn't need an explanation, but this is Luke Skywalker shown in a modern fashion with how he would and should truly always be portrayed. Yes, I know the sequel trilogy is a couple of decades down the line, but like, it's hard to look at this guy and just think, as I said earlier on in the video, I'm not going to get into a whole different topic of critiquing the logic behind Luke and, oh, he can be depressed and stuff like that, or go for a traumatic thing. I get that argument, but like, either way, this is the personification of Luke Skywalker, and the way it was demonstrated with his raw power, his post-Return of the Jedi kind of just stance and demeanor, it's personified. Definitive, I would say. It did reduce me to tears because it's like, despite any issues you have with this episode, and I can see quite a few of them, critically speaking, it's like you can't still subtract from what this episode did and achieved for Star Wars fans, and I would argue that doesn't necessarily like level out any issues that I've brought up so far, but it still is to be completely comprehended, because it's really important you comprehend what this sentimental kind of moment brought to fans, and I think a lot of people reacted in the same way, especially I think with the added disappointment in terms of majority consensus with the sequel trilogy and what they did to Luke Skywalker there. It couldn't have been any more kind of full circle for what fans like myself wanted out of that character. One thing I will say, and don't hate me for saying this, I had it blown up on a 55-inch 4K TV, and Luke Skywalker's deepfake here, I've seen better deepfakes. For example, if you type in Star Wars Solo deepfake, you see Harrison Ford put onto Alden Ehrenreich's face, even a fan's deepfake of Leia at the end of Rogue One, and it looks so much better than what even the films did, and I promise you that. If you look that up in your spare time, you'll see what I mean. It's almost like arguably they should have done that, right? But I guess that would have taken away from Alden Ehrenreich, just, you know, him being in the movie himself. But, you know, I'm really not trying to rain on anyone's parade here. I loved this moment, and I completely take what it gave me personally with the entertainment of it, but it looked pretty bad in terms of, like, it was so video gamey, and I just felt like they could have done a better job. And I am disclaiming this quite a lot because I know I'm going to get some comments saying, why can't you just enjoy it, Boba? Like, why do Star Wars fans have to complain about something just as they get something amazing? I'm really not coming from it from that angle. It's just, critically speaking, it wasn't, it was pretty poor with the other comparisons of deepfakes you can get out there. But I still don't care. That's important to note, because even though it was a very questionable execution with the CGI, this was such a fulfilling ending and heartbreaking, because you knew from when Baby Yoda picked up in the Force that it was the Jedi he sent the Force speaking out to. And one thing I want to mention in this moment, thank you. Thank you for acknowledging how stupid it would have been for any other Jedi to come in this moment, whether that's Cal, Ezra, whoever you name. Because I've said this in my previous reviews and previous videos, logically speaking, in the Star Wars canon, there is Luke Skywalker out there. He would have picked up the signal. There is no way any underpowered version compared to the metric of Luke would pick it up. No, it's Luke. For anyone else, it wouldn't have made sense, and they followed suit with that because they brought Luke in. So I'm glad they did that, but it was just as heartbreaking to see Din Djarin say goodbye to him. And I love that moment where he was almost protecting himself, saying, oh, he doesn't want to go with you, and Luke just says, he's looking for your permission. That was heartbreaking. Seeing Grogu look at Mando's face for the first time, and yes, this is the first time. Some people think where he was sipping some drink in Razor Crest before he saw him, but no, that was Baby Yoda trying to get a look at him. So this is truly the first time. This does raise questions, though. This is why I always say introducing story like this in in a time that was already established needs to be very carefully written, because now this question's like, what happened to Grogu? If Luke had a whole temple where Kylo killed all those people, you're never going to convince me that Kylo Ren, despite being a Skywalker, was powerful enough to kill this freaking baby Yoda. Grogu, who would have been, what, like 70 something at the time? It's just like, what happened to him? Where was he? You could argue, this isn't me having a go, by the way, it's just viral brain thoughts just spewing out. It's like, you could say that Mando came back for him, maybe when the Jedi Temple ended with Ben, like maybe Luke said, screw it, I'm not training any more students, and gave him back to Mando, who at this point may be the ruler of Mandalore and not Bo-Katan. It could go in many different ways. It's just fascinating in my canon head now, thinking of where is Grogu? Will we see him again? That is another question just within itself, because think about it, baby Grogu is such a big thing in this show, yet I can't see why Luke would hand him back. Yet you kind of know, realistically speaking, they're not going to show him again. But then again, they could. Let's just entertain that, because the story moving forward now, foreshadowed, is obviously retaking Mandalore. Obviously, Mando moving out of the extreme zealot version of the Creed and becoming more of a widely accepted Mandalorian, and not, as I said, a child of the Watch who take things way too far. So I do feel like there is enough story there for the next season for fans to obviously be so encapsulated with the show. But without Baby Grogu, I'm not saying that makes or breaks the show at all. I think for some fans, even though I completely disagree with that it would but make or break the show. But for those who are saying, oh, come on, Boba, it's so obvious they're going to bring him back, it's just like, why would Luke bring him back? Oh, man, and when R2-D2 came in, with Luke, the way it should be. Baby Yoda was really happy, like Giddy, he's going to have a little R2 friend. It's like, moments like this, the entertainment and the emotion that it evoked, to me, despite some of the flaws with the writing in the episode, I was completely engrossed. And then, of course, we had the post-credit scene where Boba Fett returned to Jabba the Hutt's palace, but now run by Bib Fortuna, and he basically takes his throne as, I guess, I actually think it's a really fitting ending, or, you know, beginning, I suppose, for a new chapter for Boba Fett, because he's now at the peak, pinnacle, seated throne position of that, like, criminal underworld in that specific area. And I suppose that is just, like, full circle for him, because I guess he could argue that since he was chilling there in the original trilogy just before he ended in the Sarlacc pit, that they should have looked for him rather than the Empire, and that's why he wanted to just go in there and like, rain down hellfire on them and just take over. So overall, guys, this episode, for me as a huge Star Wars fan, a huge one, but I always try and look at things critically as well, because it's very important, and you almost owe it to the show and whoever wrote this episode to, like, you know, if you never critique their work or look at inconsistencies and this, that, and the other, then how is their work ever going to be praised or graded or anything if anything just goes, or anything to a certain quality is put into the same boat as another piece of work? However, at the same time, for what they did for Star Wars and the fandom, who has been so divided and split for a long time, despite some of the things that you could poke some holes in, I think that deserves a lot of credit as well, which is why I also try and, as I said, achieve this equilibrium, if that makes sense, with trying to not be too generous to it, but also really appreciate what, as a fan, this did for me and made me feel like. Either way, what an interesting ending. What a very emotionally impactful ending. Where do you think things are going to go in the next season, I guess? But I think there's going to be a couple of videos at least spiraling off of the events for this episode, so keep an eye out on the channel for those, so make sure you're subscribed. And I would really, really appreciate it if you did check out yesterday's Kenobi show video, because I also do go over, as I said, how their rematch can work in person in canon without contradicting it. But other than that, everyone, like this video if you did enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day. May the Force be with you, always.